Hi guys, welcome back to While Loops Round 2. We are back to using the canvas and we are going to figure out where while loops fit in with setup and draw. We're going to be using this to draw multiple shapes, and because some of you have seen this last year, we're going to experiment with drawing multiple parallel lines because that is a really cool way to make some quick geometric designs. We are also going to start talking a little bit about variable scoping. I know we're not going super in depth now, but we are next unit. So if some of this goes a little over your head, that's okay. Stick with me, do as I say for now, and by next unit we're going to clear everything up and y'all will be so good to go on variables. So we are back in setup and draw, and we are going to try and make a while loop that's going to draw a bunch of horizontal lines. So to make this happen, we are not quite using a flag variable the way we did last time. And also, before I keep going, please make sure you've duplicated this code and that you are coding along with this in another window. And as always, as I go through this, if there are moments that you need repeated or slowed down, pause, rewatch, slow the video time down on YouTube so you get me talking really slowly, whatever you need to do. But we are going to start on line 10. We're going to start by making our while loops, and we do need a variable to control all of our while loops so that we don't get stuck in an infinite loop. But that variable isn't quite a flag variable anymore. And the reason it's not going to be a flag variable is it's not just going to be a true or a false. It's going to be something that holds value that we will use to draw some shapes. And we're going to change that value to make everything happen as intended. So I want to make a series of horizontal lines. I want them to go the same across left and right, and I want them to kind of stack up and down. So the thing that I'm going to be changing about them is their y position or their y value. So I'm going to make a variable called y. Again, like with all variables, this can be any word, letter, thing the computer does not already know and doesn't understand that we want to turn into something that holds data. So I'm going to have y start at, let's say 50, just because that'll put it about here on my canvas. And then actually, let's make this look like what you guys are used to. You've noticed that I have started declaring this in the draw function, and it's because I'm getting ahead of myself. If we want to keep this like you guys are used to seeing variables, I would put let y equals 50 on line 1. I might even say let y on line 1 and y equals 50 in setup. This is how you guys, up until this point, have always been taught to make variables, or like almost all variables, and that's because this works in almost all settings. This is something called a global variable, and a global variable is just like a fancy way of saying that it works in every function. I can use y in setup, I can use y in draw. If I had like a mouse pressed or a key pressed function, I could use it there too, and they can all see and access that data. This is the part that we're going to get more into later, but what we're actually going to find out right now is that this isn't the best choice for my while loop. So if I want to start making my while loop on line 14, I'm going to go ahead and say while y is, let's say I want these to go down, so I'm going to make y increase. So let's say that while y is less than 200, then I want this loop to run. And what I want to have happen in this loop is I want it to draw a line. I want that line to have an x value of, let's also say 50, and a y value of y. And then my other x value is going to be the other endpoint of my line. So let's make that at 150 and then have it as y as well. I'm making sure that both endpoints are y because that'll make sure I have a nice flat line where it's connecting on the same level on the y-axis. If I wanted this to be a diagonal line, I could add to y, I could subtract to y, I could add to one y and subtract to another y, and that would adjust the angle of my line. I could also make variables for x, that would work as well. This is just one example. Now, before you guys get excited and hit save, let's just think about this for a minute. Right now, y is starting at 50, and we're saying that this is going to run as long as y is less than 200, but right now we have no way for y to become bigger than 200. So in order to make this so it's not an infinite loop scenario, which is going to like freak out your computer and crash your browser, I need to increment y somewhere in my code. So I'm going to say that y is equal to y plus, let's say 5. I want to make like a bunch of lines really close together. And this is telling me that I'm going to take whatever y was, and I'm going to add 5 to it. Now, as we may or may not have seen in class, this is a perfect way to say, take the previous value of y, add 5, and save it back to y. But we could also write it this way. Y plus equals 5. This is like our shorthand way of just saying, you have y, add something, make y equal that. So we are adding 5, we're making y equal this. And if we haven't talked about it in class, there's also minus equals, times equals, divided equals, and you can play with those on your own time. So now when I hit play, we're going to see that I actually don't get anything. And the reason why I'm not getting anything is when I'm running my draw function, you'll see if I comment out the background, I suddenly have lines again. The draw function is an infinite loop that runs forever. The while loop is kind of living off on the side. It happens all at once. So I have made this very ugly drawing to help you visualize this. We have this draw loop, this big oval that goes around and around forever. Whatever code is happening, we get to the end, we go right back up to the top, and we start running. And we can think of the while loop like a little whirlpool coming off the side. As we're going through draw, up here we've drawn the background, we've given it a color, we get down here into our while loop, we get into like this spin cycle of going around the while loop until it's true, and then we get spit back out into draw. If our variable starts at 50, when we run this while loop, it's going to increase it to 200, but then it's 200 forever. So by the time this draw function runs to the bottom and gets back to the top, this while loop has exhausted itself. Y is 200, it's never going to run again. And it's painting a background over the top of our code, which is why when there's a background here, I can't see those lines. So while I could take the background out, a better practice is just to move where I'm using my variable. So instead of making a global variable that gets one value at the beginning of the program that we gave it in setup or at the top of the program, we're going to make what we call a local variable. A local variable is one that's declared inside a function, and it can only be used in that function. So if I make a variable, meaning I use like the let or the var statement inside setup or inside draw, it can't be seen by the other function. Anything made in draw can't be seen in setup, and anything made in setup can't be seen in draw. So I'm going to say here, let y equal 50, and then I'm going to hit play, and I should see my lines. So again, I'm going to leave a note, this controls the while loop, and this increments the control, so one day we exit the loop. Now, let me show you exactly what's happening in the code, and then on my ugly diagram. Right now, my draw function, which is one big forever loop, is drawing a background, then it's making this y variable that starts at 50, then it gets sucked into this while loop whirlpool, where as long as y is less than 200, it's going to go around and around and around. It's going to draw a line to these specifications, and after it draws the line, it's going to increase y by 5. And it's going to keep repeating this pattern until y is bigger than 200. As soon as that happens, it's going to go to the bottom of my draw loop, then it's going to jump back up to the top, it's going to draw that background over the thing it just drew, it's going to set y back to 50, and then it's going to repeat that draw loop to draw my lines. Now, we can see that happening here. I did my background, I made y equal to 50, now I'm in my while loop keeps going, and every time I loop in the while loop, y is getting bigger and bigger and bigger until it's 200. Once it's 200 or more, I get spit out, I go to the end of draw, I go back to the top, then I'm drawing my background again, I'm resetting y, and I'm going back into that while loop. So for now, we need a variable to control our while loops, but that variable has to be local and live inside our draw function. What your task is going to be for the rest of this project is to try and recreate more while loops that draw lines. For each one, you're going to need to make a variable that can be incremented in the loop. You're going to need to make a drawing, and there's some notes that I want these colored. Please remember that lines don't have a fill, they have a stroke. You can also change stroke weight if you want. And then I need them to be incremented in my while loop. If you forget this really important incrementation step, you're going to end up with an infinite loop, and it's going to crash your browser, so please save often. do your best with these, and if you have questions, come to Lab Lounge Hours or reach out in the Slack. Bye, guys.